Hey, what's going on? If you've made it to this video, then you may or may not have seen my other video in regards to my debt journey. If you haven't seen that video yet, feel free to click the link below or after this video that will talk about basically 5 lessons that I've learned and 5 tips that I could probably give you throughout your debt journey if you have one, and how I use those tips to get myself through debt. Now, this video in particular is actually about the debt journey itself. I didn't really go into detail or specify too much in that previous video about my debt journey, so if you're interested, stay tuned. So, why am I making a video about my debt journey? Well, I'm out of debt. I mean, pretty much I'm out of consumer debt, which killed me. I've still got university debt, which is like whatever. But apart from that, I mean, I'm debt free. I'm debt free. I've watched a lot of videos of people in their debt journey, and I found them very interesting and helpful and insightful even when it came to my own journey. Pretty much my debt journey started around the last term of my university course.
Finally, you probably remember in my other videos back in, I don't know, maybe a month, 2 months ago, I wanted to take a loan and I backed out. Well, I did it. I'm tossing up between getting an iMac or a MacBook Pro. I don't really know what I want to get because I've been without a computer for almost 4 months and it's struggle street. Like, it is so difficult in a way.
I was living in a small studio with a mate, and that studio was so tiny.
Not bad, not bad. It's legit like your hallway. There's nothing. It's literally nothing. There's nothing there.
Pretty much the apartment I'm in now, that studio was the size of the living room. And that was a pretty stressful time for me because I was pretty much going through university and I was finishing up. I was in my last, I think, week or two.
You are literally living in a studio apartment that has no bed. Like, there's no room. We actually share.
Basically, when I was studying, I didn't work for 3 years. I was fortunate enough to get government assistance just because my mum is low income. So I was able to sort of move interstate and get that assistance on a sort of like a 3-year contract in a way. But providing if I just continue my studies, I will get a fortnightly pay. Now, don't get the wrong idea. It's not the most glamorous sort of payment scheme. I honestly look back and I wish I had worked during my university degree because I probably would have earned a whole lot more money. For me, my priority was to just get through uni, so I didn't do any sort of internships or anything like that. I just wanted to finish my 3 years, bam, bam, boom, get out. And because I'd worked so hard during my high school years, I pretty much worked from year 10 to year 12 non-stop every weekend. I felt that I owed it to myself to sort of chill back a little bit and enjoy my uni years. So provided I had some sort of income to pay for rent and bills and food and all that sort of stuff, I figured there was no need for me to work while I focused on my studies. Fast forward, after I finished my degree, I was fortunate enough to get a job, which currently I'm still working that job. Pretty much once that whole university journey ended, I was working at this company. I was very new, just finished training, and they hit a period where they weren't really paying part-timers so much money. So I got to the point where I was only earning enough just to pay for bills and rent, but I wasn't earning enough to even feed myself. My mum, like I mentioned before, low income, so I couldn't rely on her to help me. It was my choice to move, so I felt really, really bad for asking any sort of money from her. My brother, as you guys may know, if you've been following this channel for a few years, my brother's a lot younger than me, so he didn't have a job. And I was in a brand new relationship, so she lived in Sydney, I lived in Melbourne, and there were times where I would fly back and forth just to see her. And to be quite honest, all of that played a part in being really financially stressful for me. And being new to the adult world, I guess you could say, I took the opportunity to try something different with my finances, and I made the biggest mistake of my life, which was getting into debt. Now, the loan I got was for $5 grand, and I used it to buy myself a brand new laptop because I didn't have a computer at the time. I used it to basically fund myself and sort of have a bit of fun. I didn't really realize the consequences of having high interest loans or debt or anything like that. All I knew was that it was more free money basically. And that was pretty much my mindset at the time, seeing as I hadn't worked for 3 years and I'd been getting funds from the government. It definitely bit me in the ass, but it wasn't a big deal at the time. You know, I was able to still work. I was able to still do things, go home, travel. I was still able to do a whole bunch of different things while still being in that 5K loan. I mean, all I had was to pay that off every pretty much month and I would be all good. I would always set that as a priority. I would always put my money that I owed it, because I remember the one thing that my mum told me was to never get in debt, and I did. But then I also learnt to prioritize that debt, so I always paid that debt off first. So fast forward maybe 2 years, and I found myself in a situation where I was living with different people. Now, where I moved to was where all of this sort of changed for me. I enjoyed the actual location of my workplace so much that I refused to transfer to any other stores. However, to make it easier for the people that I lived with, I chose a location to live in that wasn't exactly easy for me to get to work to. Let's put it this way. For one of them, it was like a 5-minute drive to uni, whereas for me, it was like a 2-hour public transport trip if I took all the quick rides that I could take. I was basically end of the line. So whenever I had a shift, especially if it was at like a 7 a.m. shift, I would actually have to get up at 3 to 4 a.m., get ready, be on the very first tram all the way to the city, and then from the city all the way to where I work. And that took pretty much 2 hours. There were days like Sunday where public transport wasn't the greatest. So for me, it was like a real tough journey to sort of get to work and back. And that went on for about a year. So for me, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna get myself a car. So I had already paid off $2,000 off that $5,000 loan that I initially got 2 years prior. I still had $3,000 left. I was on track to paying it, and then a mate of mine was selling her car, so I decided, why not get it? It would cut my travel time in half. I'd be able to go to work safely, and during that time when it was like starting to pick up and become winter and stuff, I really didn't like public transport, so I wanted to have something like a car. And it gave me more freedom. I was able to go do things that I never could possibly do since moving here because I finally had a car. Unfortunately, the car had a lot of problems that made me fork out at least another $1,500 to fix, and then I had to resell the car pretty much for the price that I got it for because I actually got a discount initially. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that any of the friends or people that were involved in this had anything to do with my debt. They were definitely all my choices. But my $3,000 loan went from being a $3,000 loan to a $8,000 loan. I'm normally a very patient guy, but I think when it comes to tech, I really love tech. And for me, I really wanted to make up for all the time that I had been in debt and I couldn't spoil people that I loved and couldn't take care of people that I wanted to take care of. So what did I do? I got more debt. I ended up taking out interest-free cards, buying things that I should have never ever bought or couldn't even afford to even think about, and yet I still did it. If you're with me so far, my debt went from $5,000 to $3,000 to $8,000 to $15,000. I know. Don't get me wrong, for some people it's probably not a big amount, but for me it was huge. Like I said, I came from a low income family, still come from a low income family, and I was low income, I was part-time, and yet here I am sitting on $15,000 of debt. I basically refinanced my loan like twice just to accommodate for all the extra loans that I got. I missed out on a lot. I missed out on a lot of my early 20s, a lot of the adventures that I could have gone on, a lot of the gifts and toys and prizes and things that I could have bought for myself and for other people, all because I was in this debt. But there is a saving grace. So fast forward to this year where the most craziest thing happened that the whole world had to suffer, which was COVID, and this whole pandemic was just absolutely chaotic for so many people. It has caused so much financial strain for other people out there. But for me, it was actually helpful. The Australian government actually allowed people access to their super. And by super, I mean superannuation for some of you out there, basically a retirement fund that you basically build up over your lifetime. Yes, we had early access to it because if we had any sort of financial strain, we were able to get it. Basically, if you fit the criteria, you could access it twice. The limit was $10,000, pretty much either side of June and July. So you could get $10,000 in June and then wait till the 1st of July and then apply for another $10,000 and boom, you've got $20,000 in your bank. But this time I did the smart thing and I took out pretty much exactly how much I owed on my debts and I paid it all off. So now I sit here as a living testimony of someone who was in debt for 5 years and I paid it all off. Mind you, I'm not disregarding the COVID pandemic or anything that's been going on and all the people that have sort of suffered financially through it. That sucks. I was there. For me, I took my silver lining and I made it into something. I didn't just take money out for splurging or buying stupid things, which some people did. Your money, you do whatever you want. But for me, I thought about the short term, which ironically was how I thought and got into debt, by taking the quick way out of things. But this time I did it in reverse and I did take the quick way out by paying off my debt the fastest way. Now I have no interest, now I have no money that I owe. So all the money that I earn, I can actually reinvest into my retirement fund. At some point in my life, I'm going to be able to get it back to what it was. It'll probably not take me that long at all to get it to where it was. And I'll be none the wiser. Some final thoughts on my debt journey. I hope it's been interesting to you. For me, I just think I learned a lot financially from it. I wasn't really interested in finance or anything like that younger. Clearly, the younger me had no interest. But as I got older and went through all of those hurdles and realized how much of a pain money can be if you have it and you don't have it, I've definitely made use of my time and knowledge, and I've researched, I've studied and done as much as I possibly can to learn how to get myself back on my feet. So if you made it this far into the video, I want to thank you. I know that was a lot to kind of listen to, and maybe my mundane ass voice made it feel boring, but I hope that you learned something from it. I hope that there's some takeaways from it, and if you enjoy seeing these types of videos with this cool setup that I've got up, let me know. Leave a comment below. If you have a debt journey, let me know. Leave a comment below. It'd be a lot if you could just hit a like on this video so that, you know, the YouTube algorithm does its thing, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.